And when you do that kind of searching and you really hit a bottom, maybe several times, I can say I've got the scars on my butt to show the bottoms. You have to start looking inside. And in looking inside, you see things that may have led you there. You see some bad decisions that you might have made and why, and everything has, I truly believe that the actions that we take, and certainly the actions I've taken in my life or the inactions, have a root someplace. I just didn't decide to replace drugs with a highly abusive relationship. And this, I don't say this to knock on myself. I just hadn't learned the lesson yet. I hadn't done all the work. And so getting out of that relationship and dealing with what the heck, talk about shame. Allowing myself to be hit, and is a completely different type of pain. And so I went into recovery in that way. And I never really said it that way, but so I did an enormous amount of soul searching and spent a lot of time single and getting to know myself and getting to know people. And
that's Claude Silver, and I'm Brian Falchuk.
The Do A Day podcast, where you hear from the most inspiring people who have been through hard times, overcome them, and have turned around to help others with what they've learned. I'm your host, Brian Falchuk. I know because I've lived it myself. I've written about it in my book, Do A Day, and that's why I'm bringing you this show. Remember, today's a new day. Go out and do it.
Hey, day doers. Welcome to another episode of the Do A Day podcast. I'm really lucky. I'm trying to think of the right word to say here. I think lucky, blessed, grateful, other positive and thankful words to use to describe how I'm feeling right now, to bring you this next guest. And I know I say that kind of thing often. I really mean it right now, and I probably really mean it often, but maybe I extra really mean it right now. I've got today's guest, Claude Silver, here. She is the Chief Heart Officer for VaynerMedia. For those who don't know, that's Gary Vaynerchuk's company. For those who don't know who Gary V is, Google him. You'll see pretty quickly he's huge. He's huge in a lot of different realms. He's got a massively popular podcast, but his company VaynerMedia is a really successful agency media company, and at the heart of that is the belief in the people and the values that the company espouses. And Claude is really, for lack of a better word, she's sort of the steward of that. So her job is, she says, it's to scale Gary V. And the way you do that is through the people. And there's only one way to really get people to succeed. And Claude's view is just not what I think most people expect when they see a head of HR, which of course is not her title, but that's her role. Chief Heart Officer instead of, chief or head of HR or whatever you want to call it. That implies it's more about the humans and their feelings and their contribution. And I was talking to an employee today about this interview, and one of the things I was saying is, when you translate from the human resources world into this heart notion, what you're talking about is growing people and having creators and not just doers. So that difference is what allows you to not just give someone a task and get it done like productively and efficiently, but rather how you let them create opportunity and create growth and create the next horizon for the company and for themselves and for those around them. That sense of values is really powerful in Claude, and it's powerful in VaynerMedia as well, but it comes from somewhere. And that's what I wanted to get into with Claude. It's not just who she is and what she's about today, but why she is and why she's about that. And I'm really thankful that she was as willing to get open about everything as she was, to share what is a pretty tough journey. And she's on the other side of it, and she's grown ridiculously as a result of that. And one of the reasons why it's so important is her journey is not unique. There are other people who have been in exactly her position. And a lot of people don't come back from that. But she's such a wonderful example of the truth that you can. It's not easy. Doesn't mean there isn't work involved, but you can. And you can do more than just come back. You can come back and really thrive and really move ahead. So that's why I'm so thankful and honored and blessed and other nice words to have Claude here today. So let's jump right in because there's so much inspiration and two things. One, we didn't have nearly enough time. We were both super busy and there were technical glitches. So I would love to have her back and we will definitely work on that. And the other is on the technical glitches, we lost a connection at one point. She also had her notifications buzzing because there was some stuff going on in her work world that she had to stay abreast of. So you'll hear some other sounds, but you'll also hear us cut out. And I just wasn't even going to try to fake it and meld it back together. Like we had a laugh, we did a day, we kept moving. So keep that in mind. But here's Claude Silver and more to come because we got to do this one again. Claude Silver, thank you so much for making space to join me today. It means the world to me. So thank you.
Thank you for having me, Brian. It's so great to hear your voice.
Yeah, I have to give some credit to Chris Soroy for making the connection. Of course, he had you on his show, and I want to link to that because it's worth people hearing. You talk so much about what you do today, and I definitely want to hear from that. But there's a story that led you to the today that I'm really curious about, and I want to share with everyone. So that's the focus for today. But can you just give a nutshell of this amazing person that you have become and what your mission is in especially in your work situation, but more broadly?
Yes, thank you. I'm going to actually start with the work situation because that's something that is so topical. Not only am I at work today, I just put a tweet out 2 hours ago, in fact, that says the following: bringing humanity back into the workplace, bringing us closer to connecting with our hearts, connecting to one another through tenderness and kindness. It's my mission, and I will continue to live it, work it, and bring it. Who's with me? And so I start with that because I mean, quite frankly, that pretty much sums it up. I mean,
yeah.
Mic drop, and thank you so much for letting
me
I'm really what you see is what you get. I've been an experiential learner my entire life. I was not good at academics. And I think that being said, I really learned to listen to my intuition at a very young age, which has guided me. And even though it's guided me, doesn't mean I've always listened to it. I've seen red flags and I've certainly walked right into them, but as most of us do. But at a young age, I knew I was always a cheerleader, and I knew I always liked underdogs. Funny enough, maybe it was Spot It, You Got It, and I was an underdog, or maybe knew I would be at some point. And I say underdog meaning struggling in academics.
Yeah.
But it was really apparent to me that I would be a great coach. I would be a great player coach. I would be a great cheerleader without the pom-poms. And in school, athletics is really what saved me and gave me an enormous amount of confidence where I didn't have confidence as a student taking the SATs 3 times untimed, or, taking algebra 3 times. And I really started to feel chills on my arms and really invigorated and extremely happy when I was cheering people on, when I was rooting for people, when I was on the field, on the soccer field, just jumping up and down when someone made a score, things like that. And that really followed me through life. I wanted to be a therapist, a psychotherapist. I went on an enormously long outward bound 93 days wilderness leadership program. I ended up being an outward bound instructor and running ropes courses. And everything I've done in my entire life has been to coach and mentor and lead by example and cheer people on. And that I firmly believe that spirit that I have inside is something that works in my benefit here at VaynerMedia, and certainly and works in life. So very long-winded way of coming back to why being human is so important to me in the workplace, and why I also think it's very common sense.
Yeah.
Because because we are human, and we have friends, and we have family, and we have people that we love. And then we go to work and we spend 9 to 10 hours a day at work, and we forget that we're human.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Can I be the naysayer for a second?
Anything.
And because you didn't mention like employee handbooks or policies and procedures or any of that. And I wonder if people are like, that's beautiful what you said, but it's also idealistic, or, it's sort of like a utopian. What do you have to say to that kind of response? Because I hear that, but I'm also like, that's the whole problem. Like, we get away from the value part.
Yeah. So wait, what is the whole problem?
The over structuring of the people side of the equation. That people are a resource to be managed and policied and all that kind of stuff, versus like you're going at it much more about the value of people.
Yeah, I'm going much more about it in terms of interpersonal accountability, interpersonal responsibility, interpersonal relationships, self-awareness, the fact that we all, up until that first job, have had a life. We then get into our second job, we've had a life. Our third job, we've had a life. And we're going through the same ups and downs that my coworker's going through, and the same up and down that I guarantee you my manager's gone through. But why do we get into work and all of a sudden go into this apples to apples to apples, this authoritative hierarchical structure, which seems to strip away someone's courage, someone's recognition, someone's idea of purpose, and fundamentally that it is all of our jobs as coworkers, as employees, to create a safe space for people to belong. So I don't talk about employee handbooks. We do not have our values written on the wall here. And I just talk about being real and supporting each other and being champions for one another. That to me is what I believe we learn at a very young age. And especially if we've been fortunate enough to play sports at a young age, or be on teams, or be in a symphony or a debate club. Like, we learn team, and then we come in here and we tend to forget the idea of team and what team is all about. And it's about connection.
Wow. So I'm kind of wondering how I come work at VaynerMedia now. That's beautiful. And if that really pervades the way things are run, and everything I've heard in listening to you before, I imagine it really is that way. Because one of the tricks is a lot of companies talk about it, and they say how they're non-hierarchical and they're values driven and all that, but actually it's just a bunch of marketing fluff. But there's something much more real in what you're talking about. At least that's my perception of it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really, really lucky to work with and for Gary Vaynerchuk, who's the CEO of VaynerMedia. He is a person that comes with a spirit of generosity and a spirit of belief. And the two of us met in August of 2013 or September. It was kismet. It was dynamite. It was, holy cow, you're the other half.
Yeah.
We don't look alike. We don't sound alike. We don't accentuate the same way, but our belief in people is the same. And so when he asked me to take on the role of Chief Heart Officer, it was a no-brainer to me, because it's my life. I've done it my entire life, and I imagine you have, and many listeners have. When you're a people person. When you're a we before I, and when you are a servant leader, right? So that it was a no-brainer to me. And because I had been in agencies for so long, advertising agencies, I'm fluent in agency speak, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do differently here. And he's been an enormous mentor to me, but he's also been someone who has really put an exclamation point on whatever it is that we're doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, that's sort of the dream of what you would hope for in a boss. I almost don't want to say the word boss, because it sounds like there's a subservience in that, and that's kind of the opposite of what it sounds like. It's more like you guys are yin and yang, spinning around the same core value.
Yeah, I mean, he is my boss.
Yeah,
that's totally cool. I'm older than him, totally cool. But I do think of him as a boss, and it is a funny word. He's a mentor, and his name is on the door. I think that's what goes on. But sure. He's a friend, and I feel as though I actually have I'm going to use the word playmate, although I don't want to make light of the work that we do, but I've got someone to jam with when it comes to talking about infusing this agency with empathy.
Yeah.
I have someone I can talk about it with from the clouds, 30,000 foot up, or from the dirt. Like, what is happening today? Give me some advice on this situation, or let me tell you what the meeting was I just walked out of, and, so forth and so on.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine it's pretty intense, and but yet the fact that you called that, playmate, like that shows what the dynamic must be like, despite the intensity. Intensity is not always bad.
Yeah. Intensity is not bad. And I mean, I work for 800 people. I'm here for them. So it's always on.
Yeah.
Because we're dealing with human beings again. We haven't put people into boxes. Yes, we have teams, and yes, we have roles, and yes, we have reviews, but it is a more collaborative space here, where you can zig and zag, and learning / life skills / hard skills come from a variety of people, not just your manager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Claude, I definitely want to get into your journey and the trials and tribulations that shaped you as a person. There's another theme that I want to ask about, and so I want to throw these both out to you, and maybe the order matters based on the story. So I don't want to be the judge of that, but you talked a lot about empathy when you were doing Mavericks Unlimited, and you used the term self-empathy, and you were getting into that notion. A lot of what I talk about is around the need for the starting point to be self-love, and how counter that is to the culture that so many of us live in. It's, self-criticism, self-deprecation is almost celebrated. And so that really struck a nerve for me. And I want to get into your journey, and I don't know if one is tied to the other or what. So I don't want to order the discussion. I want to let you choose that. But those are two things I really, really want to pull out from you, because the way that you talked about the self-empathy, I thought was so beautiful and so important. But I know your journey is too.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I couldn't have one without the other. So you asked the right questions. Thank you. Not that there are wrong questions, but these are tied together. There's a relationship there.
Yeah. I figured.
And self-empathy, self-love, forgiveness, self-awareness. Those are things, obviously, that we're working on constantly until our last breath. So by no means have I mastered it. I deal with my own limiting beliefs, my own imposter syndrome. I think that is one of the things that allow me to be empathetic with others, is because I have it. I've dealt with it, just as though I've dealt with a manager that might not know how to coach me, or not being able to deliver the right kind of feedback where someone can respond to it and hear it. But, to travel back a bit, I did share that I was a poor student. I came from a highly academic and educated family, a very generous family, very, very much altruistic. And my parents and my Nana, who I speak quite a lot about, seriously taught. Yeah, my heart.
Isn't that how you guys refer to each other? I love that. And then your title ends up being Chief Heart Officer.
I know. I mean, honestly, Destiny. I just broke out in tears. Yeah. My heart. Yeah. And they all taught me this idea of being a spirit of generosity. And I never knew what it was until I finally could see myself in the mirror, and that takes some years. I mean, I'm up there now, way into my fourth decade, and I've done quite a lot of work. I've done a lot of therapy on myself. I've done coaching and a lot of spiritual searching and all that good stuff. Positive psychology, somatic psychology. Brian, it comes down to, and I'm not trying to say this to gloss it over because I'll certainly go there, but I made poor choices as an adolescent and in my early 20s while I was making healthy choices.
Okay.
So I think that's a dichotomy that I imagine many people live with, which is I'm going to be an incredibly high-ranking tennis player in the juniors, and I'm going to really dive into some exploration with drugs. And at some point, one has to win, right? One takes over, and at that point, I chose to be more experimental with drugs than I chose to practice 8 hours a day on my serve.
Mm-hmm.
That experimentation lasted. Thank God, it lasted 7 years and no longer. But so at 22 years old, and this is something I've never spoken about to anyone, certainly that I work with or in an interview. But at 22 years old, I became a clean young person. I went to Cocaine Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous and really started to get an understanding of what I was running from. Wow. And when you do that kind of searching and you really hit a bottom, maybe several times, I can say I've got the scars on my butt to show the bottoms. You have to start looking inside.
Yeah. And
in looking inside, you see things that may have led you there. You see some bad decisions that you might have made and why, and everything has, I truly believe that the actions that we take, and certainly the actions I've taken in my life or the inactions, have a root someplace. I just didn't decide to replace drugs with a highly abusive relationship. And so I did that and walked straight out of doing drugs into my first relationship with a woman, and she was physically abusive. And I hadn't, and this, I don't say this to knock on myself. I just hadn't learned the lesson yet. I hadn't done all the work.
Yeah.
And so, these are the truth. I'm sure there are listeners out there that have similar paths. I mean, we all have, our quilts are all filled with different patterns and patches. And this is mine. And so getting out of that relationship and dealing with what the heck, I mean, talk about shame.
Yeah.
It was one thing to, do cocaine, but allowing myself to, to be hit and is a completely different type of pain. And so I went into recovery in that way. And I've never really said it that way, but so I did an enormous amount of soul searching and spent a lot of time single and getting to know myself and getting to know people. And at that point, I was around 25, I think, 25 in San Francisco. And I was working at this grocery store. This is in, 1996. And this man came up to me, this repeat customer, Mark, wonderful guy. And he said to me, "I know you can see." And it was the first time anyone had ever said that. And he took me to an incredible place in Sausalito called the Institute of Intuitive Studies. And there I stayed for a good 6 years, learning about clairvoyancy and intuition and what it's like to turn your back on intuition and past life regression and all that stuff that, we do in Northern California.
Yeah.
Right. And journeys to Spirit Rock and all this great stuff, and got into Marianne Williamson. And so I started to I mean, I started to know myself again. And anyway, it ties into, I mean, I could give you more stories, but I think you get the gist that there was, I would never know, ever know what happiness was like had I not hit those bottoms,
Yeah.
ever.
I'm first of all, I'm very thankful for what you just shared, how much you shared. So, and I want to respect and honor that. That was a lot to put out there. And I'm left with a gazillion questions, but I do wonder in hindsight how much you think each of those steps was a necessity and intertwined with the steps before and the steps after. Is there a way to pull it apart and not have those pieces of that specific journey lead you to today?
So that was a really good question, and one I probably think about more than the average bear. Um, I I don't know because I think experimentation is healthy. I think that teenagers and adolescents are going to try all kinds of things. I think that I as an athlete and as a really good athlete in my teens, I did things almost to an excess, if you will. I mean, I played tennis to an excess. I partied to an excess. And I have a real thirst today in my life to live my life in the most energetic and happy and fulfilled way, probably to an excess. And I think we all do, but like I want to squeeze that lemon and that orange as hard as I can,
Yeah.
especially as I'm in my late 40s and want to really make sure that, my front half, the front nine, has been exceptional. It has been hard. It has been tragic in some areas. It has been incredibly filled with light. And my back half, my back nine, is going to be even better. So that's really how I think about
Yeah.
that's how I think about life in this moment. But I don't know. I got to tell you something. Had I never known what rejection felt like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I could be me today.
Did you?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, please.
I think had I never understood the depths of what it's like to really be at the bottom of the sea, of the ocean, and swim around there for a while, I don't think I would ever be able to look someone in the face here and be able to say, I know what that feels like.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be here with you while you swim your way to the surface. And you know what? It's not going to happen today.
What I was really interrupting with was the desire to know in those moments, do you think it's you can definitely get that in hindsight.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you will, but I think if you're willing to do the work, the reflection, the valuing of the process and trying to take something from it, you can see that. It's really hard to see in the midst. And I'm wondering, did you have any moments of like, I know what I'm going through is really difficult. I don't know if I'm going to make it out, or maybe you did know you'll make it out, but it's necessary. Or do you think that takes something outside to pull you out of it or someone to show you it?
I absolutely think I had a pilot light inside of me that knew that I would come out of it. I did. I absolutely can tell you that. And I'm not sure if the pilot light was given to me or passed to me from my heart, my Nana.
Yeah.
Or from the fact that I just knew I would take myself to the very edge, but I would come back. Now, I will tell you that, I've lost a dear, dear, dear friend and my cousin, who we adopted as my brother, to suicide. And so I recognize that some people don't come back.
Yeah.
And aren't meant for this world. And unfortunately, I never had that thought. And I always knew I was meant for this world.
Yeah.
I just didn't know how I would get here. I never knew I would be in this situation to speak with someone like you, who's had an incredible journey himself, and to have the honor of being in this chair to hold space and listen to so many people every single day say, this is what I'm going through. Can you help me to remove this roadblock? Or I don't know what my purpose is. Can you help me find it? All of that stuff. So I just knew, I knew that I had potential. So that's the scarlet light. I just didn't know how I was going to get I didn't know how I was going to walk through the alphabet.
Got it.
Yeah.
I think there's like a whole realm of study I could see myself getting into right now that you see a lot of ultra endurance athletes who are also addicts or former addicts. I'm thinking like Charlie Angle, Rich Roll. There's a bunch of them that there's something about as I'm listening to you talk about your own sports experience and then going down that path or going down a more extreme path, whether it's ultra endurance sports or something else, where it's almost like an addictive personality and a sense, I think it's more than just that. It's like a sense of extreme capability. Like, I can get through this, I can do this, I can charge ahead, and I can achieve all these things. I wonder if it's just the addictive personality that makes you, run 50 miles at a time, or if there's something more from a competitive and capability standpoint.
So I've never really thought of myself as competitive, even though I played tennis as a competitor. And so it's really interesting. I think for me, it's much more, I think I've just had more of a drive to push the limits. And actually, I use the word drive. Like, I've had a drive to drive fast. I would love to be a Formula One driver. And I have this need inside sometimes to just push it. So, like, snowboarding is something that is incredibly satisfying to me.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Snowboard. No, skis. Don't ruin the mountain.
Oh my God. I was snowboarding when we still had Sorels. We didn't even have snowboarding.
Wow.
I've now gotten into wakeboarding. And so I don't have the endurance. I'm not an endurance runner. I wish I even was a runner like Rich, but I have a real passion for pushing it. And that's like a spirit inside. That's just like spirit. It's a spirit inside. The other day, I had this thought. I actually tweeted it or put it on LinkedIn, which is, is there a difference between speed and hustle? And can we teach hustle? So can we teach hustle? And I think that hustle is something that is literally in our veins, that's ingrained in our veins. And I think we can lead by example, but I'm not sure if we can teach hustle. Obviously, we can teach speed, and I think people can get, if let's say we're on a soccer field, I think a forward or a halfback knows the sense of speed pretty quickly, right? Yeah. They're fast. I think there's something in the veins of a goalie that knows the idea of hustle, and that's different. I think that they can see the field 10 moves prior to it coming to the ball coming their way. And I think they get this maybe it's adrenaline. I'm not really sure, but I think I have both speed and hustle to sum that long-winded prose out.
I've never thought of that difference, and it's it's brilliant. That's exactly, I'm just going through like picturing situations I've been in, or when I think about a top performer, as an employee, or, whether it's a sports setting or something like that, versus someone who's just good, but they're not, they're never going to set the world on fire. I think that's a big part of the difference. It's like some innate foresight and proactivity versus just they're quick and they can get to where you need them to be.
Yeah.
They were already there. It's like Wayne Gretzky skating to where the puck will be.
Yes, exactly.
That is brilliant.
Yeah, you got to have that fire inside, which I think is different than fuel.
Yeah.
Fuel is speed. I think fire is the hustle. I don't use the word hustle often, by the way.
Yeah. It's a special word then.
Yeah.
And within some limitations, but you can train for speed. You can keep putting in the workouts and get faster and faster, but you can't. And that's why I say, like, maybe it's the intrinsics or the innate capabilities is you can probably get a little bit better, but there's something about your vision. There's something about your foresight that needs to serve you to sort of like get on that adrenaline train and perform in a wholly different way.
Yes. Oh my God, totally. You can, I mean, I can't even get into like Olympic athletes, but Michael Phelps, he has trained for speed. He has trained for also the hustle of what happens in his heart, in his body, he is on those blocks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, I think we should like continue to jam on this another time because it's and get people in the conversation that are endurance athletes or that are NASCAR drivers, or it's just fascinating to me. I don't have any answers. It's just a thought.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. And you could get into a whole like the discussion around flow, such a key thing for top sports performance. And is this flow or is this something else? And can you have one without the other? And do they serve each other or do they work against each other? Like I when I think of Michael Phelps, other than the insane McDonald's breakfast that, he's doing ads for, that I can't get over that, not in a good way. Thinking about like, he does have this sense of not calm. That's not really the right word, but it's all within him. He knows what's going on. He can handle it. He's performing at such an unbelievable level. But you don't get the sense that like he just completely spent every ounce of his being and he's burnt out and he's overdone it. Like there's some level of control and performance that it's cleaner than just kind of like all out, burn yourself to the core just to try to get to the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so true. Burnout is a serious thing, but I do think burnout can be prevented with awareness, but also energy management, big time.
Yeah. And I think so much of burnout is also maybe going back to self-empathy, not making excuses anymore is, as a leader myself, a lot of the people who work for me, when they're complaining about how overloaded they are, and I'm listening to it and I see several paths out, if they would just raise their hand or prioritize differently every single, did you try skipping this meeting? Because it doesn't sound like it was very valuable. It's like, oh, but I can't do this or I can't do that, or, I can't bother that person with it, or I'm sure they'd be too busy. I'm like, you've talked yourself out of every single option before you've even tried them. And I think we need to be willing to make more space for
Brian.
Just wasn't meant to be. So I have no idea where it cut out or didn't cut out, but so I don't think I can even fake bringing that back together. So we'll leave it where it is.
So it is honestly, thank God we both have senses of humor. Like this is life on life's terms.
So Claude, people always ask me, how do you deal when things go bad? And, because I wrote this book basically about that, and it sounds like I'm plugging my book, but if I don't say it, someone around me will remind me. That they'll say the name of the book. They'll just be like, do a day. I'm like, yeah, that's right. Don't let it get to you. If I got all worked up about everything, I'd be like the most hypocritical author out there. I got to stay true to my message. Well, like I said, I'm not going to try to edit that together. We'll just have a laugh, and hopefully the listeners will too. But can I have you back on? I feel like we need to do this again because there's so much more to unpack. Awesome.
We definitely do. Yeah, I don't want to be a downer. It's like this is what this is my past, and we all have a past. But man, oh man, without that past, and we dissected it a little bit. There's no way I really don't think there's a way I could be a champion for myself and have forgiveness over some of the things that I've done, and look at people straight in the eye and be a believer in them. And that is what gives me chills up and down my arm. And that's when I know, like, this shit is right. I'm in the right place. This is what I'm supposed to be doing on a grand scale. And I'm so fortunate to speak to someone like you that has gone through your own trials and tribulations, and swam to the surface and, rocked me like a hurricane. Here you are.
Yeah, I don't even like swimming. So all the swimming talk today. No, I appreciate that. I do think the journey is necessary. I think it's very easy for a lot of people to lose sight of that, even in hindsight. If you're willing to do the work, though, usually you end up appreciating it. And that's, if there's anything I ever want to leave people with, is like, it may be hard, and we can still do it. And what you get as a result of that hard work is worth so much more than you could ever imagine.
Yeah. I mean, I'm high-fiving your photo on Skype right now.
That works. Just clean your monitor later. All right, we'll have to do this again. I want to respect your time, but I can't thank you enough. Real quickly, where can people find you? What's the best place to see all of this, these brilliant tweets you're putting out, the stuff on LinkedIn, all that stuff?
Thanks. Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. It's all me, Claude Silver.
Awesome. And of course, I will link up to that. Claude, you're amazing. I'm so glad that Chris made the connection. I'll have to send him yet another thank you. And I can't wait to do this again and to talk to you some more. So with that, I want everyone to remember today is a new day.
Go out and do it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian.
What did I tell you? Was that awesome or what? Claude is amazing. And her journey, she's amazing for her values, and that's what she gets a lot of attention for, but she hasn't really shared this journey as much. And I think for people who have listened to a number of these episodes or have read my book, you get why the journey is so important to me. And I think Claude is such a fantastic example of why that journey is so important. So like I said at the intro, we definitely didn't get enough time together. You could hear us like just barely scratching the surface on a lot of really deep stuff, both in her story and the outcome of it and values. And so she and I talked afterward, like we will definitely try to get another one of these on the books and just push even further, because there's too much to just let it go. But in the meantime, follow Claude. She mentioned this tweet that she put out, like it's not unique. She puts out a lot of pretty deep, powerful stuff. So follow her at Claude Silver. I think I was going to say it's Claude.Silver, but it's not. It's just Claude Silver. And she's the same on all social media. So check her out. And she puts out a lot on LinkedIn as well. So you should look her up there. And you should follow me at Brian Falchuk on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, everywhere. And check out brianfalchuk.com and doadaybook.com. And if this episode spoke to you, I would be so blessed if you would leave a review on iTunes. That means a lot. It really helps us grow the following and help other people discover the podcast, which means they stand a better chance of overcoming their greatest challenges, finding that inspiration, and changing their lives. So please do that. And if you haven't subscribed, definitely subscribe. Claude is amazing, and she's not alone. I have other guests like Claude that bring real inspiration, real guidance, real message to you on a regular basis. So check out doadaybook.com and check out the podcast to find links to subscribe, or find us by searching Do a Day, the Do a Day podcast on your favorite podcast software, whether it's iTunes or Stitcher or whatever. And thank you for joining in. This is a tough one. This is a deep one. And, maybe it's a lot for some people to hear, but it's really important. So I'm glad you stuck through and dealt with the technical ups and downs. Hopefully you had a laugh. I know we did. And I hope to have you back here again to do another day. Thanks, everyone.